Hi there, a very warm welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep YouTube channel dedicated to your success as a CAT aspirant. I am Vikrant and today we plan to refine our VARC strategy further. So we of course go ahead and tell you how to prepare for various sections, how to approach the overall preparation, but then we also know that it requires constant adjustment. When the paper pattern changes, when something new emerges, then we need to ensure that we learn from that and accommodate it and incorporate it into our preparation. And it's only when we do that, it's only when we incorporate all the lessons, all the learnings, that we are able to reach the very top of the game. So this session is all about those key lessons that we can draw from the paper that was held in the CAT exam that was held in 22, and how that changes, affects, alters our preparation today. So welcome Kumaresan, welcome Harshad. So let us start off by talking about the paper pattern. So in case you did not appear for CAT 22 or you have not seen the exam yet, this was the paper pattern overall. So as usual, we had 3 sections. In each one of the 3 sections, we had in VARC, we had 24 questions, DILR 20, Quant 22, with the total number of questions being 66. And out of these, we had this fixed number of non-MCQs as well. So right now, we are more interested in the verbal ability and reading comprehension section. So I'd focus more on that. So within VARC, if I look at the breakup, the total number of questions given to VARC are 24. Out of these, 16 questions belong to reading comprehension. In fact, there were 4 passages. Every passage had around 4 questions and their length was also fairly moderate. So we're talking about that same 500 to 550 words per passage length, and the remaining 8 questions came from verbal ability. Out of these 8, 3 parajumbles were non-MCQ, or as quite a few of us call them nowadays, TITA questions, type in the answer questions, whereas the rest of the questions had options available to you. The rest of the questions presented options and you were supposed to answer the questions on the basis of those options. Right? So if you have any question, any concern during the course of this session, make sure that you air it, make sure that you share it with me so that I can accommodate that during the course of the session. So first up, I think as usual, I normally prefer starting off by looking into the difficulty level of the exam. So there is this one difficulty level that we declare after the exam gets over. So same day, we give you first impressions, we give you detailed analysis, and then at times, because we are faculty members, we have a tendency to maybe find the exam to be on the easier side. So there are questions that a student may find difficult, a faculty member may look at it and say, "Arey, ye to aasan hai, aise hi to hoega." Right? So there are times when those biases creep in, but when the results start coming out, we can look at the hard data, and that hard data tells us what the real picture is. So here is that hard data for CAT 22 exam. So let's look at what kind of percentile people got at what score. I am going to compare CAT 22 with CAT 21. So here you go. Have a look at this. So in CAT 21, anybody who scored 21 marks managed to get 80 percentile. In CAT 22, that dropped down to 17. That's a significant fall. 4 numbers down. So I mean, come to think of it, yaar. If you attempted 6 questions and you got them right, you'd get 80 percentile. 90 percentile was at 23.5. So which basically means that out of the 24 questions, if you could just attempt 8 and get them right, you will be in the top 1%, top 10% of the aspirants. And then at 10 questions, you essentially go on to be a part of the top 5%. Right, so you reach 95 percentile, and you notice the consistent drop across these different bands, so a drop of 4 marks. And as you proceed further, the drop is going to also become more pronounced. So at 95, we are talking about a reduction of 5 to 6 marks. What does that tell you? It tells you that the exam this year was tougher as compared to the exam last year. Right, so at 13 questions, which is roughly half the section, you could have been in the top 1%. So the exam was tougher as compared to last year. So one key learning that we get from this is prepare for the worst. The exam can be difficult. Do not get phased. Your preparation level should be such that even when you look at some really difficult stuff, you find it comfortable. So we normally say that is a tough exam when it comes to verbal, but I'd say this year's CAT exam, going by the score and percentile mapping, is almost as difficult as that. So prepare for a higher difficulty level, and at the same time, the second key learning is remain flexible in your test taking strategy. So you notice a lot of people come to me and then they ask me, sir, how many questions should I attempt in order to clear the sectional cutoff or be in the top 5%? So if you look at CAT 21, the answer is going to be different, right? But if you look at CAT 22, the answer is, because the exam's difficulty level is higher, the answer becomes different. So here, getting 10 questions right would probably put you in a different league altogether, isn't it? 12 questions will put you in the top 5%. So your test taking strategy should not be static. You should not always aim at a certain number of questions. It's not that you go in the exam and you go with that mindset that, oh, I am supposed to score well from English, so I need to go ahead and get 14 questions right, and at 80% accuracy I need to attempt for 16, 17 questions. So if you try to do that in an exam which is tougher, chances are that you're accurate, that because it is a tougher exam, you may end up making a greater number of mistakes. And the best way to develop this sense, the best way to arrive at this judgment is to write a lot of mocks and then analyze those mocks. Look at what you felt about the difficulty level, and when the result comes out, whether your understanding of the difficulty level was right or not. So go ahead, calibrate it. And then when you sit down to write an exam, do not have this blind fixed number in your mind. Right? Before I take you to the subsequent analysis, let me take a question or two. So Rupchini has a question: how much vocabulary we should learn? Rupchini, for most of the aspirants, now it is actually very subjective, but if I talk about exams like IFT, exams like SNAP, if I keep those in mind, I think most of us will need to add somewhere between 2000 to 6000 words to our existing kitty. There is this variation because I do not know your existing level. So somebody who's already good at vocabulary will need to add just around 2000 words. Somebody who is not very comfortable with English needs to have a bit more of hand holding. That person may need to acquire even 6000 words. So if you look at something in the middle, and considering that you're a CAT aspirant, you're better than average, then I'd say that on an average we are targeting at the max around 3500 words or fewer. In exceptional cases, the number can go on and become high. Otherwise, it will remain around this level. Okay. But Rupshri, are you concerned about some specific exam? If you can share that with me, then I can perhaps give you an even more precise an input. So we've gone through two key learnings going by the difficulty level. The first is we need to prepare for the worst. So even CAT exam, even the CAT VARC can be quite tough. And the second is remain flexible. The difficulty level of various exams keep on changing, and your test taking strategy when you sit down to attempt the test must also change. But in order to do that, you need to develop that judgment, and that judgment comes through writing a lot of mocks and analyzing those mocks along with your performance. Now let's dig deeper. So let us look at reading comprehension. Oh, Kumaresan is asking which book is the best one to read. I mean, it's difficult to say best. There are around 300 root words. You get, but the most popular one happens to be the one written by Norman Lewis. Word Power Made Easy by Norman Lewis. So I don't know about you, but back in college, at least, in the engineering college hostels back in the day, Word Power Made Easy was like the Bible. Everybody bought it, nobody read it. A lot of people खरीद के रख लेते हैं यार, पढ़ते नहीं हैं. So in case you have also bought that book, now is the time when you start using it. So that book essentially has two things. It has 47 sessions where the author has shared a lot of words with you using the root words. So my suggestion is that you go through 1 to 2 sessions every day. And then the book also happens to have a word list at the end. So my recommendation is that you read that word list for 7 to 10 minutes every day. And if you are done with Word Power Made Easy, there are a lot of other good books. You have this author duo called Narenberg and Rosenblum. They have a nice one. And then there are many more actually. So once you are done, I can go ahead and share it with you. So now let us dig deeper into the reading comprehension section of CAT 22. So to begin with, let me take you through the kind of passages that were asked along with their difficulty levels. So here is slot 1, and we are talking about the first 2 passages yet. So the passage 1 was about culture and religion. Passage 2 talked about primitive anthropology and Buddhism. Then look at slot 2, humans make music, engineering and techno-social dualism. Slot 3 gave you history, and once again anthropology, where the focus was on Great Migration. And then we had 4 passages, right? Here are the next 2. So philosophy, there was a passage that talked about Stoicism and Epicureanism. Although it belonged to philosophy, I think the questions were relatively on the easy side. And then yet another passage on philosophy where the focus was on Marx, Foucault and Haber's man. And then in slot 2, a passage from zoology, a passage on institutions, another passage on biology, and then one passage on softwares, which is basically what? Science and technology. So if I look at the subject matter of these passages, then I would say that CAT 22 essentially stuck to the trend that we have seen in the recent past. So there are certain subject matter, certain areas from where a lot of passages are picked up. So in the last 5 years, it has changed markedly. But if I look at the last 5 years, CAT 22 basically continued that trend further. And in case you are not aware of what that trend is, here is the recent trend of the subject matters in reading comprehension. So you notice around 20% of the passages come from sociology and anthropology. Another area which is very popular with the examiner is science and technology. So software, social media, blockchain, cryptocurrencies, some other recent advances, those kind of things. Then if you look at the next column, which talks about ecology, zoology, biology. Now, zoology, biology are also science. So the difference is that here in the second column, when I say science and tech, the focus is more on tech, whereas here the focus is more on core sciences. So actually, I can say that around 20% of the passages actually belong to science. It is just that within that genre, the emphasis is a little more on technology aspects. Then, as usual, passages on business and economy, passages on history have been gaining prominence, passages on culture, philosophy and psychology. So there was a time when philosophy and psychology used to get a lot of passages. So I think CAT 22, the role of philosophy increased a tad bit. we had a little more of philosophy as compared to the previous years, but otherwise it more or less follows the recent trend. And because it follows the recent trend, it takes us to our key learning number 3, and that is continue to read a diverse range of subject matters. Make sure that your reading is very eclectic. So read books of different genres, read articles of different genres. We've already talked about the kind of sources to tap. So we get a lot of passages from New York Times, we get passages from Eon Essays, we get passages from Smithsonian Magazine. A fairly large chunk of passages are actually book extracts or book excerpts. So make sure that you're also reading enough books. But within that diversity, I want you to particularly emphasize anthropology, because a lot of passages come from this area. Science and biology, once again, because A, a lot of passages come from that area, and B, there are quite a few people who are not very comfortable with biology. So when the passages start talking about things like RNAs and DNAs and coagulating factors, people at times find themselves at sea. And philosophy, why philosophy? So it is not that you are getting a lot of passages on philosophy, but philosophy is usually an area that troubles a lot of people. So it happens to be one subject matter that is fairly challenging for people, and therefore that is an area that I want you to go ahead and emphasize. And at this juncture, in case you ask me what to read, apart from reading the articles and blogs, etc., Smithsonian, NYT, Eon Essays, here are some book recommendations for each one of these 3 categories. So I'm starting with some book recommendations for anthropology. So here is one book that I can very wholeheartedly recommend, and it is Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari. Sapiens is a modern classic. It is such a fabulous book to read that if you haven't read it, I mean, I'd say that if you're a CAT 23 aspirant, drop everything and start with this. Why aren't you really going ahead and reading it? It's such a nice, impactful book. Then another book that you can read is this book called Think Like an Anthropologist by Matthew, and I don't know how to pronounce it. So I've generally been pronouncing it as Angel K. So I don't know. So this book will also give you a very, it's a small book. It'll give you a very nice introduction to the world of anthropology. And here is my third and last recommendation, The Power of Not Thinking by Simon Roberts. You'll find even this book very useful in your day-to-day life as well. Additionally, quite a few of these books are recent. When I was preparing for the exam, I also read this trilogy by Alvin Toffler. So he wrote 3 books around sociology. You'd find even those books very interesting. So maybe you can give a look to Alvin Toffler as well. Then moving on, my book recommendations for science and tech, particularly biology. So have you heard of Neil deGrasse Tyson? Considered one of the brightest, sharpest brains of our contemporary world. So he wrote a book called Astrophysics for People in a Hurry, apart from, of course, quite a few other books too. So this is a book that I can definitely recommend to you. Then another very interesting book which a layperson will enjoy is a book written by Bill Bryson. It's called A Short History of Nearly Everything. And the third and the last book is written by Siddharth Mukherjee. Such a fabulous little book. It's called The Gene, An Intimate History. So reading these books will at least give you a decent introduction to the respective areas, and apart from that, your familiarity with science and tech related things will increase. So when it comes to tech, I think you already are getting a lot of it from your newspapers, magazines, essays, blogs, etc. So I'm focusing more on science and biology in this particular list. Moving on, Here are my recommendations for philosophy. So you can read Sophie's World, you can read The Story of Philosophy, you can read Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, and then there are so many other books that I can go ahead and recommend that when it comes to philosophy, or for that matter any of these areas, I generally have to restrain myself. यार रोक के रखना पड़ता है कि ज्यादा ना बता दूं. But these are the books that you can definitely go ahead and look at. And each one of these 3 books are going to be worth your while, worth your time. So make sure that you read regularly. In fact, I have given a challenge to my students where I have asked them to read for 25 minutes every day for 250 days in 2023. Preferably these 250 days should come before the CAT, right? So you can start with this list and join us in this pursuit of ours. So that was about the subject matters, but then let us also look at the kind of questions that were asked in the exam. So I'll just give you 2 question stems from CAT 22. Here is one. All of the following statements, if false, could be seen as being in accordance with the passage except, or look at this other one. Which one of the following statements, if false, could be seen as contradicting the arguments in this passage? So you notice, if false and then except, if false, contradicting. So the question stems have been very long and at times even convoluted, complex, where you had to read the question stem carefully to figure out what exactly it is that is being asked. So in order to save some time during that process, here is my next key learning. Become comfortable with these lengthy, complex, convoluted question stems. So it is not even about practicing RC. I just want you to sit down with these question stems and then think that if the question stem says, which one of the following, if false, supports the passage, so, or supports the author's point. So what are you supposed to do in this question? So if an answer choice when falsified supports, then it means, can I say that the examiner is saying, simply asking which of the following weakens the author's point? So if false supports is equal to weakens, the moment I develop this clarity during my preparation, when I go to the exam, I will not have to spend that extra time thinking and worrying. I can straight away start attempting. So make sure that you spend some time with the CAT question stems. And thereafter, if I take you through some more question types, look at this, or this, or this, or this. Notice implication, inference, which one of the following is true, which one of the following contradicts the arguments of the passage. In fact, even the previous 2 question stems that I shared, they belong to more or less the same category. So what is special about these question types? These are all critical reasoning questions. They are disguised as RC. Instead of giving you a separate section on critical reasoning, the examiner gives you a lot of critical reasoning questions after the RC passage. So the exam asks you a lot of CR, which is disguised as reading comprehension, and therefore I will very strongly recommend that you master critical reasoning. In fact, this year the proportion of such questions actually increased. If I look at slot 1, slot 1 had more than 65% of the RC was basically CR questions. So in fact, the general trend is more than 60% of the RC questions are now critical reasoning questions in the CAT. So they specifically focus a lot on inference. Some of those questions test your ability to strengthen or weaken an argument. And then there are questions that test your understanding of parallel structure arguments or analogous arguments. So my recommendation, go through syllogisms. Syllogisms acts as a nice starting point for critical reasoning. Go through syllogisms, spend 3-4 days on that, master it. You'd find it useful in quite a few of the other exams, and then start with critical reasoning. Devote 7 to 10 days where you are focusing on different question types, specifically the 4 that I have shared with you here, and make sure that you master the concepts and the approach for these 4 question types. That will ensure that you are able to answer these questions rather successfully. And although I've written just 4 question types here, there's this 5th question type that acts as a foundation for quite a few of these other question types, and that is assumption. So I'd recommend that you start with the assumption questions, then go to the inference questions. Thereafter, go ahead and master strengthening and weakening questions, and then move over towards this 5th question type. If you do not go through CR and you just count on pure RC questions, then you would realize that you only had around 5 to 6 pure RC questions in the exam this year. The remaining 10 to 11 questions were essentially critical reasoning questions disguised as RC. Okay, and then let's dive into our verbal ability section. Right, so we've talked about RC. What about verbal ability? So the paper pattern was, we had 3 para jumbles, we had 3 para summary questions, and then this time around, instead of asking us the odd one out from a paragraph, the examiner introduced a new question type which was akin to, or that can be termed as a para completion question, or you can also think of it as a modified para jumble question. So the directions for these, so the key learning here is practice these para completion questions. So in terms of concepts, in terms of the key skill set, I will say that this question does not require anything new whatsoever. So whatever you learn in para jumbles, whatever you learn through reading comprehension, grammar, all of those things are still going to be useful. But whenever you get a new question type, the approach, the technique, that changes. You need to adapt to it. So practice this particular question variety so that your approach and technique becomes all right. So in case you want to know more about this question type, here are the directions that were provided in the exam. So the question gave us a sentence, and then the sentence was followed by a paragraph. Within that paragraph, there were 4 blanks, and we were supposed to figure out the best place for this sentence. So out of these 4 blanks, which place is the best place to put that sentence in? And because this question was introduced for the very first time, I think the examiner was a little lenient. The questions were usually easy, 1 or 2 were probably moved towards the territory of easy to moderate. So how about trying a question with me? Here is a question for you from CAT 22. So you have the sentence followed by the paragraph. So what do you think? Which one of these 4 locations is the most suitable location for the sentence? Go ahead, give it a minute and share your answer with me quickly. And no Googling, okay? Don't Google. पता चले गूगल कर करके तुम आंसर दे रहे हो ऑफिशियल आंसर की से मुझे. So I'm very eagerly looking at the chat to see who gives me the answer first. So what's your answer? What's your take on this particular question? So, Roopshri, Kumaresan, Bablu, what's going to be the answer? So, in the official answer key, they've chosen this particular location for that sentence. So, you can spend some more time on this thinking. More or less similar skill set that you need for parajumbles is the one which you would actually find quite useful here as well. So make sure that you practice this particular question type so that your approach and technique becomes fine-tuned. And just like you, I am also doing that. I am creating quite a few of these questions and then thinking that if I were to approach this question, what's the best technique going to be? And I will share that with you of course in the batch that I have. And then let's look at the subject matter. So in terms of subject matter, they were more or less similar to the recent trend. So we've been getting a lot of paragraphs from biology, linguistics, science and tech from in the recent past, and more or less the same trend continued and we still had similar areas. And apart from linguistics, I think the rest of the areas also overlap with reading comprehension. So whatever you are doing for reading comprehension should suffice. Rupshi says that she was thinking of one. Look at the sentence after the blank. This starts with but. So do you think if I put this sentence in blank 1, I'll be able to justify the use of but? Eliminate and then see. But introduces or shows contrast, right? So that should help. So more or less a similar subject matter when it comes to again the recent trend and similar subject matter as compared to the RC. So as a result, more or less the same things need to be done for verbal ability, where basically you do two things. Number one, you attend your class at BYJU'S exam prep batch, and after that you practice your para jumbles, your summary questions, your odd one outs, your para completions, and raise doubts, ask doubts, and of course we'll also be practicing quite a few of these things here at this channel too. So you can get access to those classes by joining our comprehensive CAT 23 program. We have a new batch available, and in case you're somebody who's in college or you're working and you're wondering whether I'd be able to cope with it or not, well, we have a session coming up on 24th of January by our favorite Srinivas sir, where we'll talk about why you need to start your preparation right now and what kind of strategy to use so that you're able to make the best use of this time. Additionally, the window for the CMAT mock is open. See, it started yesterday. So even now you can register for it. And even if you're a CAT 23 aspirant, it is absolutely okay to write this mock. This will give you a chance to pit yourself against those who are preparing or who have been preparing for CAT 22. So you would realize where you are vis-a-vis the competition and how much further you need to improve. So don't think of it as a test where you need to get a great percentile or whatever, but it is going to be a test which will tell you what all areas you need to go ahead and improve on, that too with respect to the competition. And in case you think of any other question later, if you have a question, you can of course ask it right now. In case you think of a question later, we are wherever you are. So make sure that apart from of course subscribing to this channel, which you have done, like and share the video, and then you can also join us on Instagram, Facebook and Telegram, and you can ask your questions at any of these places. And here is one last thing, a thought that I want to leave you with. If you always put a limit on everything that you do, physical or anything else, it will spread into your work and into your life. So don't put a limit. There are no limits. You must go beyond them. Push beyond your comfort zone, push beyond your limits, and that is how great scores happen. That is how miracles happen. Right? So that's it from me today. I look forward to meeting you guys in the next session. Until then, stay safe and stay focused and stay in touch. Take care. And if you have any other question, any other concern, make sure that you reach out to us using the BYJU'S Exam Prep app or our Telegram group or Instagram channel, right? So like, share and subscribe before you leave. And that's it from me today. I plan to see you soon.